Emperor, we come for you! We come for you!
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Long live the fighters!
Well, we are back for episode number 67 of our trip into podcast land. We've been doing this for a long time,
Little while.
and it hasn't really been that long.
No, we are still infants
We
in
are
the
still-
broadcasting world.
We are still infants in the broadcasting world, but so here we are, episode number 67 of the Fusion Underground. And what we do here at the Fusion Underground is we try to make sense of the world by having principled discussions. And we're going to do that a lot tonight. We're going to see how we
Well, we're gonna have discussions. We just got to try and remember to try and keep them principled. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to have to try to keep them principled. Principled discussions about such topics as entertainment, current events, politics, and culture. We're going to dive right into that whole section. Our mission is to educate people to become critical thinkers so they can live more empowered and happier lives. As always, I'm your host, Manuel Ramirez, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by the one, the only, the extremely exhausted looking Jason Moret. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good. You're. This is just my face, man. This,
Just you look like this all the time.
I'm just there all the time. I said this before.
beat down and defeated.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. It's real uplifting. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. So today we're gonna talk. So we finished our books by Shanti Feldhahn. Really, we did what was it? 6 total, I think, 6 or 7
6
total episodes. Yeah, we talked about books by Shanti Feldhahn about men and women and the way that we think in relationships. So if you are curious about how you and member of the opposite sex in your relationship thinks about relationships, you should check out those episodes. I had a lot of fun recording them.
It was fun. It really was.
It was a lot of fun.
It was our first foray into that
Mhm.
realm or anything like that, really, with
Yeah.
any kind of scholastic intent. But no, it was good. It was really good. I did enjoy doing that. I love pretending like I actually know what I'm talking about every once in a while. So
Yeah, even though we had no idea what we were talking
no,
about.
we didn't know what the hell
We-
we were talking about.
It was a lot of fun.
But it was good. It was good.
Yeah. So today's episode, we're going to talk a little. We're going to change gears now. We're gonna dive back into conservatism quite a bit. We're going to talk about the Texas abortion law.
Oh, that should be exciting.
Ooh. Yeah, we're gonna 2 dudes are gonna wade into the abortion topic here. We might as well because it's in the news.
Sure.
So yeah. So
Yeah,
it's going
'cause
on.
It's
going on in the
gonna
news.
overturn Roe versus Wade, right?
Allegedly. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it probably won't do that.
I doubt that very highly.
But yeah, we're gonna weigh in on that. Yeah, and then we're just gonna have some fun and see where the rest of the episode takes us here.
Okay.
I did see, so yesterday I went and saw Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, the latest Marvel movie.
Oh yeah, how was that?
It was crap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it was-
no, I asked that genuinely because when I looked at it and I saw the trailer, I was like, wow, that looks like absolute dog shit.
it's garbage.
But
It
I
was
said,
absolute
okay,
garbage.
and so I said, hold on, let me
Mhm.
wait. And I saw a preview for it even tonight, and I said, did I judge this too harshly at first glance?
No.
Am I allowing some sort of preconceived notion to alter my judgment?
Yeah.
And the fact that you just said you saw it and it was crap actually goes, nope, I was pretty spot on
Yeah,
right from the
yeah.
beginning. So
Yeah. Well, let me talk about it because I'm sure there might
go.
be people listening going, wait a minute, I saw it. Did we watch the same film? Why is it crap? Um, so a couple of things. Spoilers, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I can't, I say that because I don't know if I'm going to give away any spoilers. I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about here in just a second. But I'm just going to be walking through what I thought of the film. First of all, there's a lot of CG in this film, and the CG looks bad. It doesn't look very good, and they try to hide some of the CG by having the camera move around and very, very quickly, and a lot of other stuff going on in the background and in the foreground. So it tries to cover up the crappiness of the CG. The CG is actually really, really bad in the film. Second of all, the storyline. The movie, it starts off like a rom-com, a romantic comedy. It starts off sort of like this romantic comedy feel, and I actually liked that part of the film. And then now keep in mind that the character Shang-Chi in the comic books, he's the master of kung fu.
Mhm.
So going into the movie, I expected there to be, well, a lot of kung fu.
Yeah.
And we get that in the first, I don't know, 25% of the movie, third of the movie or so. We get some kung fu action, and it's pretty cool for the most part. And then after that point, like you had me with the rom-com, and then you had me sort of like this street level, we're just going to do kung fu fighting. And then it shifts gears and it becomes this, I don't, it explodes, and they keep amping up the fantasy and power level of the characters in the film. There's not a lot of wokeness to it, which was actually pretty good. Even
Well,
though
that's good.
one of the best characters is Shang-Chi's sister in the film, I actually thought she was better. But let's say, like, you used to study martial arts, or you do, right?
Don't turn all the attention on me. For everybody else out there listening, I got a big truth bomb I'm gonna drop, which is gonna change some of this.
Mm,
But Dr. Ramirez trained in kung fu for a lot of years
I
and
did.
was not half bad. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually part of where your anger might be stemming from.
Well,
So
no,
let's refocus here. Okay.
the part that I didn't like was you have the main character, the guy who was trained in the arts of by his father and the 10 rings, which is basically his army of kung fu warrior dudes, right? So he's trained from like age 7 to be a badass fighter. Cool. I'm along for the ride. But
Right.
the younger sister, was not allowed to train. Dad was
Right.
like, no, you're a girl. You stay,
Right.
stay off on the sidelines. And so what she did was she watched everybody train. And then
Okay.
she self-trained and became better than her brother.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so I was like, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
no,
How are you going to self-train to become better?
I can appreciate that most of your so yes, to answer your previous question, yes, I trained in martial arts. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
is most of that training self-inflicted and self-practiced? Yes. However, without a master or without a sensei to teach you, you ain't gonna learn anything. That's
Right.
like telling me that any Joe Schmo can go fight in the UFC because he has pay-per-view on lockdown on his TV and watches all the fights
Right.
all the time. No,
Right.
that's not how that works.
You're not getting that feedback, through the trainer and all of that. And so, but she self-taught, and then she left. She escaped the confines of her father's empire, and she went off into the world at 16 years of age, and she built an underground fighting empire herself. She built a fight club where they battle
Okay. Yeah.
for money.
Mhm. Yeah.
At 16.
Okay.
She did this. Yeah.
What?
And
You were going somewhere.
No,
with
that was just, she's
that.
awesome. Like but the character, like when you would strip away her martial arts stuff, and you're just like
Mhm.
the nuance of her character buildup. She was actually an interesting character, the sister. I was actually
Right.
more interested in the sister than I was in the hero of the film. And in the third act of the film, it just goes completely off the rails. It turns into Dungeons and Dragons in the Marvel
Mhm.
universe. I mean, literally, we have soul-sucking demons and dragons and fantastical creatures and all kinds of magic, and it just goes really off the deep end. And Aquafina, she's this
Water.
Asian comedian.
Oh,
Her
okay.
name's Aquafina, like the water but spelled
Yeah.
differently, right? She's in the movie. She's the plucky comic relief in the film.
Hmm.
She's not a superhero.
Right.
She has no powers, but she learns to shoot a bow at the end of the film in about an hour, and she becomes really good at it.
Well, did she montage it?
No,
This is important. No,
no, no,
she
no.
learned in an hour. There was
She
no
learned in an
bow
hour.
learning
Yeah,
montage.
yeah. Because
Okay, you
see,
ruined it.
the film starts off as like a Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then it turns into, now you saw the Three Amigos, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it goes from Big Trouble in Little China to the Battle of Santa Poco.
Oh, okay.
So
Amigos,
that's,
amigos, amigos. You
yeah.
remember that? What does
Yeah,
this town really do well? We can
we
sew.
can sew. Which is what they do in Santa Poco, or I'm sorry, in Tola or La To. I don't even remember how it's pronounced. It's this it's this Oriental Chinese Asian name of a Talo. I don't know, but they sew, and they happen to sew with dragon scales to make armor.
Oh,
So they're really good at that. And then of course, they're really good at martial arts, but they can sew too. So it becomes the Battle of Santa Poco at the end. I'm not kidding.
I believe you. I believe you.
And there's Shang-Chi, there's Aquafina, and then there's the sisters. So there's three of them, the Three Amigos. They go and they
Right,
do the Battle
right.
of Santa Poco, and they save the day. It's just absolutely, it's absolutely bizarre at the end. And the end, just the third act just kind of completely slows down. Yeah, and
Well, and this
Aquafina saves
is
the day. She even shoots the dragon she does like Bard the hunter from the Hobbit, and shoots the dragon in the neck.
shoots
And
in the one weak spot, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and this is the problem with, and every gamer out there knows this. When you start building your level 1 characters, and you're doing your dungeon diving,
yeah,
and you start role playing, and as you build and progress these characters up, well, then the bosses and the enemies and everything has to get harder and harder and harder. Next thing you know, you're saving the world literally every time you get together to play. And
right.
look what happened to that show, Supernatural, if you ever watched that. They were going after ghosts and goblins and witches and stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun for the first few seasons. Next thing
Yeah.
you know, they're saving the world, and they're battling angels and demons and Lucifer and other realms, and it got so overpowered that you lost all sense of relativity to it, and it's kind of,
Right.
what the hell,
And that's what happens in this movie. Like they battle. They literally, and I can't say Shang-Chi did. Oh, and by the way, Shang-Chi is his name. That's like his birth name. It would be like, how we've got superhero names like Moon Knight and Captain America and Iron Man. We got cool like superhero name, Batman, right? You got
Iron
cool superhero
Fist,
names.
right?
He's Iron Fist, Daredevil. He's Shang-Chi. Well, that was the name he was given at birth. That would be like you finding the 10 rings, and your superhero is Jason and the 10 rings, right? I'm like, doesn't he get a cool superhero name? We're just
Yeah.
going to call him Shang-Chi.
Well, remember, the superhero name is part of the secret identity, which necessitates at least the burglar mask. You have to have a mask on.
Right.
And from what I saw in the previews, he has no mask.
He has no mask.
So there's
just
no
Shang-Chi.
reason for an alternate identity, because there's no reason to conceal his identity. He's just
Right.
the kung fu master dude,
and
Shang-Chi.
then it's like, where do you go from here? So the film, they battle this gigantic soul-sucking dragon. The more souls it consumes, the more powerful it gets, and it literally saves the world. So where do you go from here? Like,
Valhalla?
they're right. There's like, it's like, I would have, I think it would have been interesting had they kept it to kind of a low power level, just kind of a street, almost like detective kind of
Right.
film, a lot of kung fu action, you know. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. Instead of, they just kept ramping up the power levels. Oh, and then at the end, like he basically becomes initiated into the Avengers, right? So you have the Hulk there, and Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, who can't even act her way out of a wet paper bag, even when she only has like 1 or 2 lines. She's terrible, and she has a brief cameo in the film. Brie Larson does. She's absolutely atrocious, but she's there. But so he gets kind of initiated into the whole Avengers thing, right? But so does Awkwafina, the plucky sidekick who has no skills whatsoever. So she's also brought it, and I'm like, but she doesn't do crap. Like even Robin, I know Robin's on the DC Comics side, not a Marvel character, but even Robin is a better sidekick and much more deserving of being brought into the Justice League than Awkwafina, whose superpower is cracking jokes during a 2-hour film.
Well, but that's important now. I mean, I saw the Endgame movies, and they were always very mopey. They could have used an Aquafina to get them giggling.
Yeah, they could. And then at the beginning, the best, I think one of the best parts of the film, one of the most fun parts of the film, which makes no sense anyway, is at the very beginning, and Shang-Chi is battling, these assassins on a bus in San Francisco. And then the bus it becomes like Speed. It loses its brakes, and it's going racing downhill in San Francisco for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, I've been to San Francisco, and you can't cruise down a hill for 10 minutes in San Francisco. There's just not that many hills. They're not that long.
Yeah.
And
there's a hell of a lot more traffic. You're going to hit something.
Right. There's a hell of a lot more. Like the battle sequence is like 10 minutes long, and this bus is just out of control, and Awkwafina is trying to drive it. And of course there's no brakes, and, but it's got some of the best, just martial arts that are happening, in it. But again, when the battle started, I was like sitting there thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, they're just kicking it. The 2 main characters are kicking it on a bus, I think trying to go to work, and then they get jumped by assassins, like what happens to everybody when you ride a bus, apparently. It's just, I was like, wait, the whole time I'm watching the fight, I'm like, well, okay, the fight is cool. Cheesy CGI effects now and then. The fight is cool, but why is this even happening? Like, just because they're Asian on a bus in San Francisco?
Whoa.
I don't know.
Whoa. Over the line.
So I went in. Here's the thing about the movie was, I went in on a scale of 1 to 10. I went in expecting a 1, and I kind of got out of there with a 3. So
okay. So it was better than what you were expecting when you went
it was better. Right. But it was still a garbage film. It's not very well done. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't pay any attention to character development, story development, anything making sense in terms of plot lines, and you're just into it for the summer popcorn, flashy spectacle event, you'll love it.
Well, in all fairness, I'm going to say this. I don't know really anybody besides you at this point who goes to a movie to begin with who's expecting it to be a 1 out of 10. You know how many people I know actually get no. There's nobody. If I saw a preview for a movie and I'm like, that's going to be garbage, and I don't want to see it, I expect a 1 out of 10 of enjoyment going to see that movie. You know what I do? I don't go see it like most people. I have to turn I have to understand your headspace for a sec. Why did you even go?
It was a date. So does that answer your
good God.
question?
Yeah. Well, did she pick it?
It was a great, yeah, but it was a great date. Had a great time. I had a great time. I did.
I'm glad you had a great,
yeah.
a fantastic movie going experience, sir. I appreciate that.
Despite the crappy film. No, but, yeah. So go check out Shang-Chi.
No, no, this
Yeah.
is my point. Everybody out there just heard how terrible and awful it is. Only moronic, crazy people go,
Crazy people.
man, that sounds absolutely awful. I have to go spend money to see it now. I apologize, everybody out there listening. This is what I deal with when the cameras are not rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, this is fantastic. Oh, I have another set of, well, I can't even really call it a palate cleanser from now on. I just, it's just more mental health, people documenting their own mental health. So I thought I would play it for you because it's
because you listened to it and were jaw dropped and
yeah. So y'all have to listen to it too.
Now we have to. I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
So does that make sense?
Oh, we understand.
Oh, okay. All right. So this was off of TikTok. This is not parody by any stretch of the imagination. We all know about the different use of pronouns, right?
Oh God,
he,
no.
her,
Not
him,
again.
she, them, they, these, or whatever. I don't know. This is new. This is new. So I am sharing. Okay, I am sharing sound. Sometimes I'm not. So, but check out this one.
I just added bug to my list of pronouns, so here's a very quick tutorial on how to use bugs, pronouns.
I just want to stop that for a second because she claimed to say that she just added bug, 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 to her list of pronouns.
To her
list of pronouns. Yeah, bug is not a pronoun.
It is now.
It is now. Let's continue.
Sentences. Okay, let's go. I'm meeting up with my friend Moth later. Bug just dyed Bug's hair, and it's a super cool green color right now. I think we're gonna go to Bug's house and play some video games. And then I think Bug said that Bug wanted to go to the store by Bug's self. So I'm gonna head out after that, and then maybe we'll get to hang out another time. I love hanging out with Moth. Bug is a super cool friend, and I'm so glad that Bug hangs out with me. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, that is how you use Bug's self pronouns. And I'm always willing to answer questions about my pronouns.
I think her name is Moth. And I think that's why she decided to go with the pronouns bug and bugs and bug self.
I need a fly swatter. I'm gonna go over there and smack Bug's Moth face until she wakes up from her own stupidity.
I don't even know what here's another one. This is we're just making up words and trying to normalize mental illness. Listen to this one.
So you can look this up, but what it means to be lithromantic / acchiromantic, it's kind of called both.
So
what?
I just had to stop it here for a minute because I think this is a young woman. I think it's a girl who is trying to transition to a man because her voice has changed, but she has facial features that are very feminine and hands that are very feminine, but her voice is now changed. And what I feel very I my heart breaks for her, because if at some point she decides to detransition, she, she's just doing irreparable damage to her body. Her voice is not going to change back that much if she stops the testosterone and decides to detransition. But what she came up with these words here for those that maybe you couldn't really understand. She says, uses the words lithromantic and achieromantic. Achioromantic, I think is how she pronounces it. So let's just go ahead and hear this again.
So you can look this up, but what it means to be lithromantic / achieromantic, it's kind of called both, means I feel romantic attraction, but I have no desire for it to be reciprocated, or it quickly dissipates as soon as I find out it's reciprocated. So the question was, how did I figure that out? I actually figured out halfway through my current romantic relationship, but I was searching through identities because I knew I didn't feel romantic love quite like everyone else. And that is what I found that fit me both. Every time I would get into a relationship with someone who I thought I really liked, it would just dissipate. Or as soon as I really got to know someone, I wouldn't like them anymore if I found out they liked me. So it was really just sifting through the different identities and finding one that matched me. Now, that doesn't mean that I love my boyfriend any less. It just means I love him a little differently. And
Um, it- she doesn't want to receive romantic feelings back from anybody, but she wants to give them. So as soon as she realizes that somebody is interested in her, she gets turned off. How does she even have a boyfriend? This is not a classification of sexuality. This is the the manifestation of some deeper rooted problem that she has with relationships. She needs counseling. She needs help. This is not
Yep.
normal relationship behavior. And yet, sadly, there's a large portion of our society who is trying to normalize this and saying, no, this is totally acceptable and fine for you to be this way. No, it's not.
Right. Well, our society right now is so focused on placing blame, and I mean that in a very general sense. So bear with me here, but placing blame on everyone else as to why there's confusion about how we feel as individuals. And instead of people taking the onus upon themselves to recognize that they are at odds with something and try to understand why that is for them so that they can learn, grow, identify, and become better people for it, they're looking for outward stimulus to actually lay the onus upon to justify why they feel that way, and then turn around and make it other people's issue. And unfortunately, that also turns into, it's not me feeling odd that's the problem. It's because I haven't found the right identity that doesn't make me feel weird about how I feel right now.
Right.
And again, it's all outward expression. There's absolutely no self-understanding and growth. We've taken all responsibility away from the individual to figure out where and how they fit into society, and we're actually placing it on society to actually accommodate whimsical change. That's why some of these people have 30, 40 different pronouns, and they change all the damn time because they can't figure out where the hell they are. And they, instead of doing that, they want everybody else to bend to their whim as the leaves blow.
Yeah.
Well, to hell with that.
I know. It is it's insane. I feel my heart breaks for these people. It really does. I feel, I really want them to get to seek help. I just fear that someday these individuals they'll get a little bit older, they'll mature, they'll start recognizing that the craziness in them was wrong, especially the girls that are trying to transition and becoming a male.
This is not going to change until we stop allowing it to be a norm and we stop allowing it to be accepted. Because I mean, you have talked about this yourself multiple times, that the world needs bullies, and we need our society to stand up and tell people that you're freaking acting like a damn crazy person. What the hell is wrong with you? But our society is so freaking whipped right now that we treat these poor, mentally deprived people, and I mean that genuinely, like this is okay, like this is normal, acceptable behavior. And so why would they ever feel that they need to change? No matter how much they grow or mature, as you say, they're not ever going to change because we refuse to hold them to a normal standard of behavior.
Yeah. And you know what cracks me up about this whole thing too is these individuals, they come right out and they say, society, you have to accept me the way that I am.
No, I don't.
But yet their actions, their arguments are about themselves not accepting themselves for how they are.
Right. But
Because-
that's society's fault, remember?
It's just, right.
That's what I was just saying.
Society has to accept. Basically, their argument is society has to accept me, but I don't like who I am, so I want to change who I am.
But it's society's fault.
But
and
it's
I expect
society's
you to
fault.
be able to figure that out for me so I don't have to.
This is like this circular argument that keeps spinning around the, it's like swirling around a toilet bowl heading into the sewer.
Well, and we as a collective, the collective we go, oh, bless your heart, pat you on the head. It's okay. Whatever you're feeling. Sure. You want me to call you he, them, bug, moth, cat, rabbit, they, them, is, Z, I don't know, civil J. What the hell? Who knows? Sure. I'll call you whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
Or I'll just call you Bob because that's your fucking name, dude.
All right, let's get into the whole abortion thing, shall we?
Yeah, let's dive right into that. No.
Incoming, prepare thyself for a train wreck to unfold here on the Fusion Underground.
We're ready.
But look, we're talking about this because this is actually going on in society right now.
We don't have to make up crazy-ish.
No,
We're living it.
we're living it. So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
So last week, however long it was, Texas passed their anti-abortion law, which basically says no abortions after 6 weeks, or right around that 6 week mark. Because and the reason why it's 6 weeks is because the law says no abortions once doctors are able to detect a heartbeat.
Right.
Okay. First of all, they're not the first state to put this law on the books.
No.
But everybody's freaking out over it. The reason why everybody's freaking out about Texas is because there are a lot of
it's Texas.
because it's Texas. Yeah, that's
because
the only
it's
reason.
Texas.
Because it's
That's
Texas. But really clamped it over was that the Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to overturn it. We're not going to do anything about it right now. And that sent all kinds of people into a tizzy.
Yep.
The
same kind of hysteria happened around the voting law.
Yeah.
Which,
yes.
Mind you, Texas voting laws are still more liberal, if you will, and more open and less restrictive than those in Delaware, which is your liberal champion superhero president's home state.
Yeah. Exactly.
Who he called, what did he say? Was a throwback to Jim Crow, I believe.
Yes. Throwback to Jim Crow.
Which, the voting laws in Texas are still more open and more forgiving and easier to navigate than those in Delaware.
And what's crazy about this whole Texas thing, so right at the very tail end, before the law was to take effect or whatever, there was one doctor at an abortion clinic who performed 67 abortions in 17 hours. This is something that is praised by members of the left. They're celebrating the fact that a doctor murdered 67
almost 70 babies in a day. Yeah.
The satanic church, the Church of Satan, came out against the law in Texas. And I thought, if if the Church of Satan comes out on your
On
side
your
for
side,
something,
you're probably on the wrong side of
You-
the argument.
right, you're probably on the wrong side of the moral argument here. If the Church of Satan comes out. So
You can't make this shit up, man. What?
you know what's
Actual F?
I know. You know what's amazing is there are going to be people that say, well, look, you guys are two dudes, you have no, you don't get to talk about this issue. There are people that
Wrong.
want to say that.
Okay, stop. I'm gonna stop you and I'm gonna touch on this because this pisses me off.
Go for it.
You know what? Human life is not a male or female friggin' issue. This is not about women's rights to an abortion. It never is, and it never has been, and it never will be about women's frickin' rights to a damn abortion. What this is about our right as human beings to life. Period. End of story. There's no freaking room for discussion on it. This is about right to life. Now, all these people that are out there right now pissing and moaning about this abortion crap are the same ones that say every life is precious and all lives matter. Don't freaking tell me that human life is not a male, female, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or other. This is a human issue, not a gender issue. Now shut up with that crap.
Yeah. You know, they like to say, the people on the left, the pro-choice people say that that men should not be talking against abortion. We shouldn't be talking about this at all because, well, we're men. We don't get pregnant. We can't have abortions. And then they take that a step further and say that, well, pro-lifers, particularly men, are just a bunch of men trying to boss women around. So first of all, we're just trying to suppress, we're trying to oppress women by coming up with this. Well, first of all, this is a complete and total myth that has been perpetuated by the left. The pro-life movement has predominantly been pushed by women. So there are a majority of women who lead the pro-life movement. So to say that it's just a bunch of guys fighting against this is ridiculous. But also we have to remember that when Roe v. Wade, you know, that biblical decision that was laid down by the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade was decided by a Supreme Court of all white dudes.
Mm-hmm.
So if men can't have a say on this issue, then maybe we should strike Roe v. Wade from the books because it was decided by men.
It was decided by men who are always looking at oppressing women. So therefore that should be overturned. And
Right.
if it holds merit, it should be reintroduced and judged by 7 women. Sure.
Right. The other one, some of the other arguments that I find quite interesting is the pro-aborts, and I like to refer to them as the pro-aborts. Yeah, I would have more respect for somebody who just said, you know what, I'm totally in favor of infanticide and I'm pro-abortion. I would prefer that somebody come out and just be honest with what they twist themselves into these pretzels trying to rationalize their position. And I saw a picture on that somebody posted on Twitter celebrating the fact that this woman had 21 abortions.
Okay, I have to pick on something you just said for a minute because this
Sure.
is another pet peeve.
Sure,
I
go ahead.
have yet to have a discussion with anyone who is, as you call it, pro-abortion, who has ever justified their position to me. Not one. Every single one of them has defended their position by demonizing mine. That's not a defense to your position. Have you ever talked to somebody who is in favor of abortion who actually defended their position without demonizing somebody else for their
Correct.
opposing position?
Correct.
There
I never
is
have.
no defense to that.
Yeah, I never have. One of the big arguments in favor of being pro-abortion is women women have this inalienable right to have reproductive rights. Okay. And I say, yes, women do have reproductive rights. But remember, we're talking about abortion, which means the activity of reproducing has already occurred.
Mhm.
So reproduction that's already happened, essentially. And so we're not talking about forcing a woman to reproduce. We're not even talking about forcing a woman not to reproduce. That's not even that, because reproduction has already occurred. So that argument is an argument that falls flat with me. That
Well,
this is a
and
reproductive rights issue.
if it were a reproductive rights issue, let's just say it's a reproductive rights issue. Okay, I'm going to take that at face value. Then the father can say, hey, this is a reproductive rights issue. I don't want a kid. I'm going to force you to have an abortion. He's got rights.
Right.
Is that right? No, of course not. You have the right in your reproductive rights to utilize contraceptives.
Mhm.
That's your right. And if you're out there getting more than one abortion ever, I'm sorry, you should probably think about utilizing some of your rights prior to reproducing.
Right. Another issue that, or an argument that the pro-aborts always use, is that a woman has a right to choose. We hear that a lot.
I think she already made the choice.
Well, I've always
Oh,
said
I'm
that
sorry.
too. I've always
Go
said
ahead.
that too. Is like, how many choices did you make before you even got pregnant? How many choices did you make that you probably should have made a different choice
Mhm.
before the act of reproduction actually occurred? Right. I mean, there are countless choices that led up to that moment, and you could have made just maybe even make one of them different, and it would have resulted in something entirely different. But we always use that. We always hear that, at least from the pro boards, is that it's a woman's right to choose. And what people need to, well, first of all, yeah, you had numerous choices that you could have made differently, but you also don't have this universal right to choose.
Correct.
That doesn't exist. So there are some choices that you and I cannot make.
Mhm.
So I cannot make a choice to simply, to rob somebody else or attack
We've talked
somebody
about
else.
this with all of our rights, all of our given rights, the right to free speech, the right to bear arms, the right to peaceably assemble. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Your rights cannot infringe on the rights of others.
Correct.
That is the limit. That's the fence to
Right.
where your rights extend and others extend too. That's the boundary line of your conduct. You cannot go past that in every other aspect of your life. You want to bear arms? Bear them. You want to shoot somebody? That's too far.
Right.
You have exercised your right beyond your limits, unless there are other circumstances where they were also going to inflict harm upon you, etc., etc. This is where it becomes a debate, and that's why those things go to trial.
Right.
So your right to choose when it comes to your reproductive rights, when you murder an innocent baby, you have gone beyond the boundary line of your friggin' conduct.
Right.
You psychopath murderer.
Right.
That's it.
And I always like to explain that, rights are like this sphere that exists around us. I have the right to act within the sphere, but everybody else has a sphere as well. And at some point, our spheres, they can come up and they can touch, but they can't pass over. So my sphere of rights cannot intrude upon your sphere of rights. So my rights end at the moment where your rights begin.
Mhm.
Okay. And that goes for anything.
Sure.
That goes for anything. I mean, that's why we don't have a right to food. We don't have a right to eat, but you have a right to keep the food that you procure on your own. So you can't go into a grocery store and say, I have a right to eat, and just get a bunch of food and walk out without paying for it.
Unless you're in California.
Unless you're in California, in San Francisco. That's correct. Because the store owner has a right to their property, which the food is their property at that moment. So this whole concept that you have the ability to choose and make any kind of choice that you want, that doesn't exist, even when you're talking about, especially when you're talking about other human beings, because you have a right to choose. Well, I don't have a right to make a choice that results in the death and the death and destruction of another human being either. Even if they piss me off or they did something really terrible, even if somebody murdered a member of my family, I still technically do not have the right. Now, some people might say I was justified, right? But you don't have the right to go out, take justice into your own hands, and murder the person that murdered your family member.
Correct.
You don't have the right to do that. So women do not have this universal right to choose, just like nobody has a universal right to all kinds of different choices.
Correct. Yeah. Murder is illegal everywhere.
Right.
Except for the only exception to that is capital punishment.
Right. Yeah.
And
or murder by the state. Right.
That's kind of odd when you think about it that way, isn't it?
Right. Another argument that I just that kills me is that well, before I go there,
okay,
the pro-aborts, they like to come up with all kinds of different language to try
they don't want to call a human being a human being. They call it a zygote, they call it an embryo, they call it a cluster of cells, they call it, I mean, you name it.
Right. And because they're trying to take away the human aspect of it.
Yeah,
right.
They have to dehumanize the living organism so that it's considered a living organism, or at least an organism, not even living. So that they can talk about it like a thing, not a person. And
all murderers do this. All murderers do this. All murderers do not look at their victims as human beings. They dehumanize them. Even when the state does it, even when the state commits murder, they dehumanize the criminals because they use the term, they're a criminal. They're not a member of society. Basically, they use language to separate that person as a human being away from the acceptable areas of society. We see this, we saw this in history with the rise of the Soviet Union, and we saw it with Hitler and the gas chambers during the Holocaust. Those that were the undesirables, they were demeaned, and they were looked down upon as being less than human.
Correct.
And when you can make somebody less than human, well, then who cares if you kill them? And so that's what the pro-aborts have done here. They use terms like fetus, embryo, zygote, like you said, but clump of cells. You mentioned that just a minute ago. Well, we're all a bunch of clump of cells, all of us. Right? It doesn't matter whether you're, an embryo or a fetus or an actual walking around human being. You're still a clump of cells. So that argument, we've recognized that you can't kill a clump of cells walking down the street. So by your own argument, you can't kill the clump of cells that happens to be within the womb of a mother.
Right. Yeah, and it's disgusting. And for years this has worked. And they do this, the proverbial people who want to separate the connection and human aspect to anything they'll change definition of words so that people get confused about what the hell we're even talking about, or dehumanize the individual by calling them something else, again, so that you cannot feel that is someone's son, that is someone's daughter, that is a kid you went to school with. Those are things that we as human beings, we connect with when we talk about other human beings. You think about, I don't know, friends you had going to school. Some of them could be complete dirtbags today, But when you were in third grade and you were sitting around doing Mother May I and Red Rover, they were kids. They were innocent. They were that human connection. They will always try and steer us away from, because that human connection just brings us back to the fact that we're all human beings, and we're only 2 steps away from being, either the greatest person on the planet or a complete monster. And when you're talking about how do we justify murder, well, we make it not murdering an innocent human being, a child. You make it, well, it's a thing. It's a disease. Right. It's a parasite, really.
Right. And to go back what you just said, killing a human being, you can't. It's morally wrong and morally reprehensible to kill an innocent human. Mm-hmm. And abortion does just that. It kills an innocent human. Therefore, abortion is wrong. It doesn't get any more difficult than that, which is why I would have much more respect for people that just came out and say, you know what? Yes, I'm all for infanticide. I want to kill a human being. Just to own it for what it is. I'd have a little bit more respect for you, rather than you trying to twist yourself into a pretzel to absolve yourself of any moral wrongdoing.
Yep. And I would actually have at least some sense of respect for a mother or a would-be mother who actually says, look, I already got 10 kids. I don't want another one. This was a mistake. I want to murder the baby that's growing inside of me because I cannot handle the responsibility of that.
Right. One thing that I just that I was just thinking about, when we started this whole thing, we were talking about how the leftists will say that men can't have an opinion on this matter. Well, what's funny is over the last year, leftists have twisted themselves into pretzels to define a woman. Well, not to define a woman, actually, because now they've made claims that yes, even men can have babies. Mm-hmm. So they've made that argument. I haven't made that argument. You haven't made that argument. No conservative has made that argument. No
conservative has ever made that argument.
And so yet they make the argument that now men can have babies. Guess what? If men can have babies, then men can have opinions on abortion.
Men have reproductive rights, and then men can have opinions on abortion.
Yeah. So you leftists, you made this bet on your own. So, because remember, biology does not. We played the clip last week. The young man saying that womanhood is a social construct.
No different than citizenship, I think, was
than being an American. Right? It was just womanhood is just a social construct. Well, so guess what? You and I get to have an opinion on it.
There we go. We're both women now.
Yeah.
At least for the next 20, 30 minutes while we're talking.
Yeah. The another argument that I think is hysterical is the pro-aborts like to say that women have a right to their bodies, and therefore they should not have to be life support to another human being. Okay. Well, that's a bunch of hogwash, because if as a young mother, when you do give birth to an infant and you do have a child, you have to love and care and feed it and all of that kind of stuff. You are still physically, emotionally, psychologically, that child is emotionally and physically and psychologically dependent on its mother. So you still have to, even after birth, you still, meaning after the act of birth, not the noun.
Post-birth. Postpartum. Yeah.
Right. So that argument doesn't hold the same kind of weight as it does for the preborn. So whether preborn or postborn, well, if you're the mother, you still are on the hook for taking care of that child quite a bit, unless of course you give it to somebody else, which you can't do before the child is born. So you don't have body autonomy. The argument of having body autonomy, meaning I can then just kill another human being so that I maintain my own body autonomy, it still also doesn't work because of the act of you don't have body autonomy if you were to have the child. You look confused by that argument.
No. I'm really, I don't think I've ever heard the argument that women should not have to be life support for another living being.
Yeah.
That's new for me. So I'm contemplating this and postulating this, but honestly, I mean, my first reaction is, okay, all right. So you do not want your body
To take care of
used
another human being.
to take care of another human being. Okay. Now, at face value, I'm going to say that is a semi-rational argument. Fine. Then why are you not sterilized? Why have you not gone and gotten yourself a hysterectomy?
Or had your tubes tied or whatever.
Or or tubes taken out, or what? Because if that is your true, honest opinion, then you can fix that outpatient, and you'll never have to worry about that. And
Right.
you cannot, I'm sorry, I was sitting here thinking about the counter to that argument. You're like, well, what if I want to have kids one day? No. Au contraire, mon frere. You just said you don't want your body to be used as life support for something else. Well, guess what? That means you will never be able to have kids.
Yeah.
Because at some point, even if you want it, you're going against your own values or principles at this point. So if you firmly believe that, then your argument really isn't with anyone else but yourself. It shouldn't
Right.
be for abortion. It should be for, why are you not talking to your doctor right now about getting a procedure done so that this never comes to be an issue for you?
Right. The whole body autonomy argument is basically saying, I don't want to be forced to take care of a child, therefore let me kill it. And so that same argument, if you were to extrapolate that same argument and just go through time, then we would have to be able to say, well, as a mother who already gave birth to a child,
Right.
if at some point you say, well, I no longer want to take care of it, I should be allowed to kill the child. No, you would actually go to prison for murder for that.
Correct.
So the fact that you do, whether that occurs either pre or post birth, is irrelevant. You're still dependent, or the child is still dependent upon you, its mother, to take care of itself, or to take care of it. It's still dependent upon a person.
Oh,
Just
don't
the
get
same
me
way
wrong.
as-
This is still a backwards, retarded, stupid, irrational,
course.
idiotic argument.
Just
But it
because
was
you
a
don't
new
want to
one.
take
It
right,
just
just
took
because
me
you
a
don't want to
minute.
take right, just because you don't want to take care of another human doesn't give you the right to kill another human. Just because you don't want to take care of it.
Right.
And that's essentially the argument that is there.
And honestly, if you really do feel like you don't want to take care of another human being, then I say, well, good. I don't want you taking care of another human being.
Right.
Go see your doctor and have your procedure done so that doesn't become a problem, not only for you, but for an innocent child and for the rest of society, who will have to pick up the pieces when you fail.
Right.
You failure.
Right. Another argument that I like is, well, abortion is healthcare.
No, that's anti-healthcare. Dr.
Right.
Kevorkian was actually, practicing anti-healthcare.
Right. Healthcare
you
for whom?
dumbass.
Healthcare for whom? The child is not a disease that needs to be extricated from the body.
I've heard
It's not a tumor.
a baby called a parasite before, but not this case. It's not a cold. There's no medicine. You jackasses.
Right. So abortion is not, it's not healthcare. It's you can't say that you cannot use the term. Essentially what's happening here is we've got people kind of trying to come up with all kinds of, well, they're using terms to dehumanize the fetus. And when that doesn't work, when that's not working, they're trying to use the term healthcare Because, well, who would be against anybody receiving health care?
Yeah, who would be against the idea of purifying the land and country to which we reside, right?
Right,
That sounds awesome.
right,
Hitler said that.
right,
He was absolutely and praised himself for purifying the motherland
right,
of the infection that was Jews.
right. And here we've got people today. We've got people today, call them pedophiles, who are trying to rationalize their behavior by saying, well, it's really love. And they're trying to say that pedophilia is just another form of love. And it's, allow them to try to normalize their behavior so that they can be allowed to have sex with children. But that's not love. There's nothing loving about it. That is a psychological demented position to hold. One, looking at children and being sexually aroused by them, and two, taking a child and bringing them into a very adult activity that they are not psychologically or emotionally or physically prepared to have. So you don't get to rationalize that. You don't get to it's no different than saying that rape is actually making love to somebody.
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're dressing up the abhorrent activity with a word or a phrase that is a little less scary. This is why I say, if you're going to be pro-abort, at least admit what you're doing. Just say, you know what? I want to kill a child if I get pregnant. I want to commit infanticide. Because that's exactly what you're doing. Just own it. That's all I ask, is just own it.
Yep. And I'm sorry, again, you cannot justify that position simply by demoralizing and demonizing my position of disagreeing with you. That's not a defense.
Right. Yeah, that's not a defense. Yeah, another argument that is used a lot is, well, we don't really know when life begins.
Yes, you do.
Yes,
Yes, you
we
do.
definitively know when life began. We literally know that. It's called the moment of conception. We literally know when life begins. If we were to go to Mars and we were to find a single-celled organism on Mars, we would immediately celebrate that we found life on Mars. And
Life
all of these
found on Mars.
and all of these same leftists would be screaming about the coolness of science.
Right. Science. Yeah, I love that.
The party of science.
Wait, I was gonna say, no, don't steal my thunder, you ass. I thought we were the science deniers, all the crazy conservatives, right?
Right.
We're all the anti-science people.
Right.
And yet now that we can actually point back to science, well, look, you can actually follow the growth chart if you want, and even point out here's life. It's right there. See it?
The moment life begins.
There's science again. You crazy science denier, you. Oh, that'd be good. Maybe we should start doing that. We call them science deniers. All the pro-aborts out there. Watch them get all friggin' face turned into a imploded cantaloupe.
We've had people on the left, politicians actually, who have argued the fact that, you know what, it's possible that life doesn't even really begin until like 5 years post-birth. I kid you not, because they're trying to make. These are the same people. I was watching on Twitter, for example, the number of people that were up in uproar over this whole Texas law, that were demanding that abortion be permitted literally up until birth.
I have heard people saying after birth.
There have been people that have,
it's disgusting. Those people should have been aborted.
Right. Literally, the baby is born, and if the mother in that instance says, no, I don't want it, then in some states, they can put the baby off to the side and just let it suffer and die. That is and how anybody can look at that activity and say, well, that's perfectly acceptable. That is, in my opinion, that is just pure evil. Who could actually just take an infant and just throw it in the trash? That I can't even, it boggles my mind.
I was gonna get sick. I'm sorry. My Whoa. Bleh. My daughter was, well, you know this, was very, 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 very tiny when she was born. She needed a lot of help to get through her first couple months. She was 2 months early. She was 3 pounds. I'll say that again. 3 pounds. I literally held her in my one hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea, just conceptually thinking that she could have just suffered and died right there, literally makes me want to almost throw up right now. It is absolutely disgusting and deplorable to think that human beings can think that way, let alone act that way.
Yeah.
Ugh. Ugh.
Yeah. It's just absolutely terrible. We know when life begins. The whole
Yeah.
thing. Another argument is, the pro boards, they claim that, well, if you're on the pro life side, you must be a religious zealot, and so therefore stop forcing your religion on me.
No, we're
That's what-
pro science. We
Right.
covered that.
Right. If I were to say don't kill another human being, it's wrong to commit murder, that's not based on that's not a religious argument.
No. At least I don't think so.
No. I mean, talking to the woman who wants to have an abortion. If I say, well, why don't you just kill yourself? Why don't we just kill you instead? Therefore, if you're pro-abortion, let's say she's not even pregnant at the moment. Let's say she's totally pro-abortion. She's like, if I ever got pregnant, I would kill it. Okay, fine. Why don't we just cut the dumb, and why don't we just murder you now? She would probably be offended by that and probably say, well, that would not be right. Well, of course it's not right. It's not right to take to murder another human being. It doesn't matter at what stage of human development they're in, right? And this is when they come back and they say, well, it's a potential human. It's a potential person. I've heard that argument before, that it's just it's not really a person, it's a potential person. We'll define an actual person. This is the same argument that they have with women right now. Would a high schooler be a potential person? They haven't actually fully developed. Their brains are still developing until, our brains still develop until around our mid 20s, around age 25 or 26.
You're a gamer at heart. You haven't reached level 5 yet, where you actually are a normal person.
As human beings, our minds, our brains are still developing. And who among us, when you were 20, when you were 30, you look back and go, wow, was I dumb at 20, right? You've grown and evolved in your own thinking and maturity from the age of 20 to 30 or 30 to 40, etc. So are you getting more and more, are you becoming more and more of a person as you age? Because we're changing, we still change, and we're growing and we're learning and we're maturing. So then at what point is somebody actually a person? And if we're still growing and affecting change, then aren't we just all potential persons up until some magical age down the line? So can we kill anybody up until a certain point of age?
Yes, I believe the answer to your question is yes. And in all seriousness, yeah, whatever is standing in the way of convenience should be obliterated without any consideration for what, whom, or why that is in front of you. And we've heard that with there was a call for heads for people who just had an opposing viewpoint here not long ago.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, if we disagree with that person, then we dehumanize them and we can say we don't want them here anymore. We can get rid of them. Right. If we a baby is going to be an inconvenience for you, then absolutely, we're not going to call it a baby. We're going to call it a zygote. We're going to call it an embryo. We're going to call it a cluster of cells, and we're just going to murder that for you too, and we'll take care of that. Now vote for me.
Now vote for me. Yeah. Another argument that people that pro-aborts will throw their hands up in the air over is just simply, well, abortion is legal. It's already legal. Well, because
Abortion is or should be legal, rare, and terrible, right? Wasn't that the three? I think.
it was like legal, rare, or legal, safe, and rare.
Legal,
We
safe,
never
and
hear
rare.
about rare anymore. We never hear about it being, infrequent. But yeah, you know what? Abortion is legal. But first
That
of all,
doesn't mean it should be.
legality has nothing to do with moral, with whether something, just because something is legal doesn't necessarily mean it's morally right. Okay. And there can be things that are morally right that are actually illegal to do. Because a group of people in Washington creating laws, or at your Capitol building creating laws, they don't have to create a law that is morally right. And just because they happen to create a law doesn't mean it's morally right. Hell, slavery was legal in this country at one point. Didn't make it a moral activity.
Absolutely.
You could beat your slave, for crying out loud. You could whip them. You could treat them however you wanted. It didn't mean that it was right just because slavery was legal, and technically at the time they were your legal property if you were the slave owner. So again, it wasn't morally correct. So
if we legalize pedophilia, is that going to make that morally right? No.
Right. If you're right, exactly. If we just said, yeah, you know what, NAMBLA, have at the children. It doesn't make them morally correct to then have sex with children. So the whole legal, well, it's just legal and just suck it up. That doesn't hold water. That doesn't hold water.
So what was, for everybody out there listening, what was the actual law that went into effect in Texas?
So the law, it went into effect on Wednesday. And the Texas law bans most abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy.
6 weeks.
Yeah. 6 weeks.
Oh my good God. I'm sorry, that was sarcasm, but maybe that didn't come off. 6 weeks.
For me, it doesn't go far enough. For me, it doesn't go far enough. I would like to see abortion complete. But even if you live in Texas, and you want to get an abortion, you can't decide that within the 6 week period.
Yeah, really. That's kind of what I was getting at. You got 6 weeks to make up your mind. Right. If you are a woman who is out there who says, no, I don't want to be life support for anything, as soon as that EPT test comes back with a little plus sign on it, go get it handled.
Yeah.
Go do it. You know, why is 6 weeks going to be a barrier for you? Or is getting an abortion kind of one of those things you do down the road when like changing your oil in your car? Well, I was busy this week. I'll do it next week. I got to schedule my abortion, my baby murder next week. Right. Don't let me forget that, honey.
And you know, what irritates me is when the pro-aborts try to use abortion as a way to save the life of the mother. And let's be very clear here. There's a difference between going to an abortion clinic and having an abortion versus being in a hospital with surgeons and nurse staff and ICU wards and that whole thing, and something happens and they have to take the life of the child to save the life of the mother. Those are two completely different things. And that is not made illegal.
Correct. That
because it's never made illegal.
Zero bearing. Zero.
Correct.
On abortion laws on the books and abortion laws currently in effect, or abortion laws affected by this law. It has nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with that.
even when abortions were quote unquote illegal, that was still acceptable practice.
Because it was considered a medical
That was medical
a
necessity.
medical necessity.
Correct. That
Nobody's
has
sitting-
never been a freaking issue ever. That is
Right.
absolute smoke and mirrors bullshit.
Right. You don't go to your doctor and the doctor says, well, we have to terminate the pregnancy, go down to Planned Parenthood tomorrow and take care of it. No, they bring you into the hospital.
Mhm.
They check you into the hospital. You're given a bed. You have an actual medical procedure. You don't go to Jiffy Lube. I mean, this is the same.
Yeah.
You're not just going to the
It's
local
not the
Jiffy Lube on
drive-through,
the
okay?
drive-through, which is basically what Planned Parenthood is, and these different abortion clinics. So two completely different things here.
That's so freaking ignorant. It just blows me away.
Another argument that the pro aborts always say is, well, if you don't like abortion, then don't have one. Well,
Okay. So that's saying if I don't like murder, just don't murder anybody.
just don't murder anybody.
It's
If
fine.
you don't like murder, just don't murder anybody. And
But
you
don't
won't have
get
to
mad
deal
at
with
me
it.
for murdering whoever
Right.
I want. Yeah, okay.
Right.
If you don't like rape, don't rape anybody.
Can you
But,
imagine?
but don't get mad at me if I want to go out and do it. You're
Right.
impeding on my rights. That's my sexual right.
Right.
What?
Right.
How absolutely asinine is
Right.
that?
Can you imagine a pedophile saying, well, if you don't like adults having sex with children, then just don't have sex with children, but allow the pedophile to go and have sex with children. Nobody would make that argument. Nobody's going to make any of those kinds of arguments because they're morally reprehensible.
Right.
If you don't like abortion, then don't have one. You don't get to have this sort of this gray moral environment in which to live. And all these people, again, all these people want is they want abortion to be there as a form of birth control. That's it. I wish they would just be honest. It was the same thing several years back here in Arizona. We had people who wanted the ability to smoke weed legally without going to jail. I get it.
Mhm.
And they years ago, they put up a lot, signed it, got people to get a bunch of signatures up to put a new measure on the ballot. And what they did was the measure was to be to have weed for medicinal purposes. So to legalize marijuana for medicinal purposes. Come on.
Yeah.
Everybody knew nobody was going to use it for medicinal purposes. That's not what you wanted it for to begin with. Just be honest and say you want to get high. Just be honest. And when they did that, when they said, you know what, we just want to smoke dope and get high. Guess what? It passed.
Yeah. Yep. Sure did.
So yeah. I also don't like I don't like the argument that if you restrict access to abortion, then there are going to be more kids living in poverty. I grew up as a poor kid, and I didn't even know I was poor.
Right.
Kids that are poor, they don't know they're poor. And well, you know what? Is it better to be poor or is it better to be dead? I think it's better to be poor.
What's the greatest generation? What years was that? It was my grandparents, probably your grandparents too, I believe, roughly.
Yeah.
They're referred to as the greatest generation.
Lived during the 40s, so born during the 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. 20s, 30s in that area. And I'm sorry, I could have the dates off. But I do consider them the greatest generation. What they lived through in the Great Depression and the recession and actually learn from that. My grandparents, nothing went to waste. My grandmother canned food, canned everything. My grandfather would go hunting, let's say for pheasants. My grandmother would actually save and pluck all the feathers out of those to make ladies' hats and sold the hats. Nothing went to waste. What they learned out of necessity, we have lost out of complete convenience. And I think it is destroying our society piece by piece. We have no sense of personal gumption anymore to be able to fix anything, to be able to address anything, take ownership of everything. It's always, when we just started this off tonight, my sexual confusion is somebody else's problem, and it's for society to identify as I see fit in the moment to make me feel better, so I don't have to address it for myself. Can you imagine some kid, some schmuck like that back in the 30s? He'd get his ass kicked, but he might actually grow up and be somebody with himself. That kid's going to be, suckling at the teat of the society that he curses every damn day for the rest of his life, or her life, or its bugs moth's life, or whatever the hell it wants to call itself. And
the whole argument about poor kids too is, well, there are a lot of poor kids right now in America.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we just go round them up and kill them all?
Right.
So,
I mean, if that's
so
your
terrible,
issue, then everybody who lives, all the children, let's just say 5 and under, because we don't want to be monsters.
Right.
Any kid out there in the United States who's 5 and under who lives below the poverty line, come on up and we'll shoot you in the head. That's the argument you're making right now. I'm saving you from poverty. Don't thank me now. Your parents will thank me. Society will thank me. Let me don my cape as I murder children for the sake of preventing child poverty.
Right.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Right. Just, and that's why I don't like that whole argument of saving. I mean, it's the same way, when this whole abortion thing came up, there were leftists who were talking about the UK and celebrating the fact that very few children are born in the UK with Down syndrome. There's a reason for that. And the reason is not because British people have somehow become more superior in passing on their DNA and have eliminated Down syndrome. It's because they're killing children that are going to be Down babies. That's why very few Down babies are born in the UK and in other countries like, that are very far progressive. Which absolutely breaks my heart. What breaks my heart, because I have a nephew who has Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. But he's a precious child. And I think even though he's got Down syndrome.
My wife actually asked me the other night if I would ever consider adopting a Down syndrome baby.
Yeah, I would.
And that shocked me. I didn't know how to respond to that. I mean, I felt very vulnerable and in a very precarious position because I didn't know whether she was serious or kidding or what. And I was freaked out. I'm like, why are you asking me a question like that? And she genuinely loves Down syndrome kids. They're happy. They're adorable as all get out. I mean, you can't not love Down. They're just cute as a button, dadgummit. But I don't know. Let's focus on our 2 kids right now, honey, and we'll worry about that another time.
Yeah. So, if we're really worried about kids being born into poverty, then let's just go round up all of the children who are actually in poverty, and let's better yet, let's round up all of every human who's below the poverty line, and why not murder them? And then guess what? We would eliminate poverty.
We would eliminate poverty. Yep.
We would eliminate poverty. Would that not be a good thing?
That's what you want. Are you telling me you don't want to eliminate poverty in the United States? They hate it when you use that kind of rhetoric logic back at them. I'm telling you, you watch their face implode.
Yeah. There was a myth, we hear it. I've heard it for years that without abortion, then women would just seek back alley abortions, um, and that argument has been used many times, but it doesn't hold weight, because wherever abortion has been restricted, or where abortion is illegal, uh, we don't see women going out and having back alley abortions and shoving wire hangers inside them to kill the child. That doesn't happen. There's no evidence for that. There is zero evidence for that happening anywhere. And that argument has been debunked numerous times. So if you ever hear the argument that, well, women will just have back alley abortions, that's not true, especially I think even more so today, given that we have things like the morning after pill, which are there for women who, not just women who were raped. I mean, if you think that you might have gotten pregnant over a one night stand, go get the morning after pill. At least at that point, you're am I in favor of those? No. But it's a lot better than shoving a vacuum up inside of you and taking care of it that way.
Yep. There, excuse me. There are, whether I agree with abortion or not is really, it's irrelevant to the point. There are a multitude of options and a multitude of treatments, if you will, still widely available to you. And to get worked up over Texas actually putting a statute of limitations on your decision time frame to, wait a minute, let's do this again, 6 weeks, is not going to affect your ability to murder your babies. Really isn't. It just means you have to actually do it within 6 weeks, for crying out loud, of getting pregnant.
And this is a big slippery slope. I mean, it's the kind of slippery slope of killing people who are medically infirm, and I've been against that morally. I take the position of valuing human life and wanting to preserve and protect that human life, because also history has shown that societies who do not value human life, whether it's pre-birth or the infirm, that can lead to some really, really crazy shit happening in society. And different societies have done that. I mean, Nazi Germany was one of them. The Soviet Union was another one that didn't value human life, and Stalin murdered tens of millions of his own people. Mao Zedong did the same thing.
Well, and what blows me away, it really frustrates me, it's infuriating to me, is I hear most of the people who are out, and I'll call them the pro-aborts, if you will, on these issues, are the same feminists who are standing up for women's rights, the power of women, blah, blah, blah. But yet they don't understand how quick and how easy the correlation is between this and societies where women are not valued as human beings. I mean, we just left a huge empowered group of them in Afghanistan right now who literally treat women like property and young girls like property. They are going to be used in the worst ways imaginable. And yet, I mean, that's what happens when you actually dehumanize people, whether it's women or boy or men or whoever. When you dehumanize something, things that you would find absolutely deplorable and reprehensible become commonplace. This is the exact same thing happening on this issue. You have dehumanized these unborn life forms. They are human beings. When you dehumanize them to this point, then you literally can shove a poker up into its brain, scramble its head, cut it up in the womb, and take it out piece by piece.
Yeah. George Bernard Shaw, and I'm not switching gears here. George Bernard Shaw, he is, he was a poet, playwright, writer, and he has been lauded by the left. Leftists love George Bernard Shaw. He was actually a big eugenicist. And so I got a clip here. What's funny is the clip says George Bernard Shaw talking about capital punishment. He's not actually talking about capital punishment. He's talking about something far worse than capital punishment. But listen to this is old footage. I mean, George Bernard Shaw, hell, he was born in 1856. He died in 1950. I think this is an old black and white. I'm not going to share the video, but I'll just share the audio. Had to have been like back in the 20s or 30s. And it's really disgusting when you hear what George Bernard Shaw actually said vocally, and the left celebrates this guy. Listen to George Bernard Shaw.
I never know exactly how to make my opinion clear, because I object to all punishment whatsoever. I don't want to punish anybody. But there are an extraordinary number of people whom I want to kill. Not in any unkind or personal spirit, but it must be evident to all of you. You must all know half a dozen people at least, who are no use in this world. Who are more...
Yeah, I don't know if you caught that. He basically says, you must know people. You must know people that you would just want to kill.
A half a dozen or so people who are of no use in this world. Right.
Half a dozen or so people who are of no use. Yeah, and you all know them. You all know we have people in your life that you've encountered that you just want to kill. So what he does is he takes this very crazy way of thinking and he throws it back on everybody else that says, "Well, you know what I'm talking about." He continues here.
Use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. And I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before the income tax commissioners, and say every 5 years or every 7 years, just put him there and say, "Sir or Madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence?" If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social boat, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us, and it can't be of very much use to you.
Holy crap.
I am the greatest.
Wow. Every 5 to
Every
7
5 to
years or
7
so,
years.
you have to come before a board, the Inquisition, and justify your existence.
Justify your existence every 5 to 7 years and show that you are producing more than you consume. Otherwise, you're no good to us, and therefore you must not be any good to yourself either. So justify why we should keep you alive as members of society. Can you imagine every 5 years having to go before a board to prove your worth? Otherwise, they're just going to kill you.
Can I imagine it? Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Right. This is the left. This is the left here. This is and this is how the left has always been. As I said before, George Bernard Shaw was born in 1856, not 1956.
Right.
1856. The left has always been about. That's why I didn't like the video, because it was titled, George Bernard Shaw talks about capital punishment. He wasn't talking about that's way beyond. That's just
no. He started out, which was interesting. He started out, "I'm not for punishing anyone." Yeah, but I am for people having to justify their continued existence in our society.
Right. I'd rather he at least be in favor of punishing people, because at least if you punish somebody, they did something wrong.
Right. I mean, that if you were going to make it a capital punishment issue, I guess that would like, well, you haven't really produced as much as you've consumed. So guess what? There you go. So it's not really a punishment. It's just a measure of your worth.
Right. And who gets to decide? Somebody would have to
Exactly.
decide, right? That's
Who's
always
the
the key question.
inquisitors?
Right.
Who's the Inquisition that gets to
Right.
decide how your worth measures on the scales?
Right. Compared to whom?
Compared to what?
Who gets to define the bar that everybody has to meet or exceed?
Right.
You know, who gets to define that? Because I guarantee you there are going to be people that that have a lot of worth in our society, but maybe they don't meet the definition as specified by the few elites, and so therefore they would have to get sent off to the gas chamber. Sucks to
Wow.
be them.
Sucks to be you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Oh man. Yeah, that was good times. And so
I'm gonna ask anybody out there in the sound of our voice if we've missed a valuable talking point on the pro-abortion front. I'm absolutely willing to entertain that. Oh, before we go, you have a shout out you need to make.
Oh, I do have a shout out. Thank you for reminding me. We just want to give a shout out to Michelle listening to us out in Pennsylvania. She's been contacting me and sending me emails, and she does listen to the show. Her and Lisa. So thanks for listening to us. Introduce the show to other people. We'd love to get more people writing into us and telling us either how we're doing things right or how we're doing things wrong. So we like to hear all of that. So thanks,
Absolutely.
Michelle.
And where can others reach us at, Dr. Ramirez?
You can find all of our stuff. It's easy. Just do fusionunderground.net. Fusionunderground.net. It gives you access to all of our videos, all of our audio stuff. Or you can, if you've got a phone and you have a handy dandy little application where you can search for podcasts, just type in Fusion Underground. You'll find us because we're on all the main podcast streams. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker. We're on all of those, so you can find us on there. Just do a search, and we're also on Facebook. You can find us at Fusion Underground AZ on Facebook. Yeah, so there we are.
Cool. There you are.
And you can send us email at contact@fusionunderground.net. That's contact@fusionunderground.net. I get all of the emails. Some are interesting, some are comical. So
if there's a really good one, I'm sure Dr. Ramirez will send it my way so I can get it too. Or if you'd like, just address it to me so that I can actually get one or two of those. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Definitely.
He doesn't allow me to respond to emails because, trust me, I'm no different in type that I am in person, and I will tell you exactly how I feel.
Well, that was a fun one. I'm sure hopefully we'll rile up some folks that probably get all pissed off at us, and
that's all right. We look forward to that.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. So anyway. Thanks for listening, everybody. For Jason Moret, I'm Manuel Ramirez. You've been listening to the Fusion Underground. Peace word late.
Good night.